Good evening. My name is John Marshall, and this is my video presentation to Persuade on my class, The Fundamentals of Public Speaking at Mid-America Christian University. Tonight, we're going to be talking about stilling the storm within, and we're going to be reading from Mark 5, 35 through 41. This is an interesting story which is applicable to us even today. Mark 5, 35 through 41. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them as he was, and the other boats were with them. And then there arose a fierce gale of wind, and the waves were breaking over the boat, so much that the boat was already filled up. Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on some cushions, and they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he got up and rebuked the wind and the sea. "Hush, be still." And the wind died down and became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They became very much afraid and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Now we need to take a step back for just a moment and look and see what had happened. Jesus had just, prior to this parable, this little parable here, Jesus had just given an incredible message to a huge group of people. All right? And he was tired. And that was the purpose for getting in the boat and falling asleep. Now, there's several different types of storms. There's three to be specific. One of the storms is a physical storm, kind of like your thunder and your lightning and things like this. It's normal, not a problem. And then you have the storms of everyday life, which are generally storms that are going to occur at work, family, personal type storms. And then we have spiritual storms. And these spiritual storms are the types of storms that test our faith, question our faith. And for each one of these storms, we have just some simple questions. What do we do? And where should we go? Why do we do these things? For the physical storms, you generally run for cover. For the storms of life, some people run from those storms of life. Some people choose to ignore them. Some people choose to be aggressive towards them. But for some reason, nobody ever chooses to take them to Christ. And of course, the spiritual storms are the types of storms that you need to take to Christ. And you need to do it all the time. Not just any time, all the time. Now, if you can imagine, let's take a step back for a moment. If you can imagine the disciples had just witnessed Jesus preaching and performing all kinds of miracles, and these disciples were on an incredible spiritual high. And this spiritual high would be something similar to what the youth, what you guys would feel when you are at church camp, for example. You get that spiritual high after seeing all this stuff. And that's what they had done. They had seen this man performing all kinds of miracles. All right? But he was tired. You ever go to church and you hear this great message, and the Holy Spirit is moving through there, and it's really tugging on your heart. It's really convicting you. And when you get home, you're tired, right? Well, that's what happens here. Jesus had just gone through this entire sermon that he had given to all these people, and performing the miracles and doing the things and allowing God to work. It was just exhausting. Jesus fell asleep. But one of the things that Mark in this book, that Matthew and John share the same story but did not include, was the fact that they took Jesus as he was. And that's something we're going to get back to briefly. When Jesus got into these boats to go to the other side, he was going to take a nap in between, and we'll get to the other side, and then he was going to preach again. He needed some time to rest. Well, Jesus knew that this storm was coming. You can't hide anything from God. He knew that there was a storm coming. And just for the record, there's always a storm coming. The storm doesn't matter if it's going to be a physical storm or it's going to be a storm in your life. And whether it's a spiritual storm or, like I said, a storm in life, you don't know. It's one storm after another. But each one of these storms are designed to build up your faith. And that's kind of like what happened to these disciples when they got in this boat. Now, they had all crawled into this boat. The storm started up. They're freaking out. Water's filling up. And they're so worried that they're going to die. They're so concerned about themselves. The boat's filling with water. What do? Hey, let's go wake up Jesus. So they go wake up Jesus. Jesus, he's just totally blown away. You guys just watched, as if Jesus was telling them, you guys just watched me do all these miracles, and yet you don't believe that I am the Son of God. It's incredible. They just act like they just don't believe. But they did believe that he was the Son of God, but they didn't have the faith. They didn't put their faith where they needed to put their faith. Right? And Jesus was totally blown away with this, and he actually confronted them with that. But he gets up and he just says, "That's enough. Stop. Be calm. Be still." And everything obeys. Now, when Mark says that they were afraid of the storm when it miraculously stopped. They were just as afraid when the storm had stopped because they couldn't explain why it stopped. Okay? Let me tell you something about Christ. Christ already knows what's going to happen. The Father knows what's going to happen. The battle between Satan and us is over. Not the battle. I'm sorry. It wasn't the battle that's over, but the war is over. All right? We already know how the war is going to end. We already know that. Everything else is just, what are we doing? Where are we going? How are we going to deal with everything else in between? But we already know that the war is over. We know that Satan loses. We're winners. We're going to heaven. But these disciples weren't thinking about that. They weren't thinking about the fact that Jesus is with them. They did not have the faith that Jesus was there and that Jesus was going to take care of them. They were expecting Jesus to help them secure the boat. Maybe that was the case. Maybe they're expecting Jesus to jump up and run over there and pull up the sails or something like this. But no, Jesus just commanded it. Okay? They were putting more faith in the physical Jesus than in the faith of God, the faith that he is the Son of God. All right? The key is that they'd be physically helping. When they could not do it themselves, they asked Jesus for help. They thought of themselves. They thought that they needed to try to take care of everything they could before they went to Jesus. The storm got that bad where the boat's filling with water before they went to Jesus to take care of the situation. And if you stop and think about it, do you think that you're going to die if you're with Jesus? Do you think that a flood is going to take care of that? Wipe him out, wipe you out? If I'm standing with Jesus, I don't have anything to worry about. I would honestly think of myself as being bulletproof. But it was beyond their control. It was beyond the disciples' control to understand it and to do anything about it. So they go confused and scared to Christ, not having faith that Christ would take care of that situation. All right? Jesus, when he got after the disciples, he only got after them because of their lack of faith. And when we don't have faith, we get disciplined as well by God the Father. We need to have more faith in what we're doing. The storms of life aren't, God doesn't give us those storms of life to torment us, to make us feel like we're worthless. He gives us the storms to build us, to strengthen us for the next step, for that next adventure that he has planned for us, to grow us in our relationship with him, to build our strength with him and not in ourselves. Okay? The failure here, well, the storm itself was not the real danger. All right, the real danger was what was going on inside the disciples' hearts. The storm would have come and gone, but the damage that a lack of faith does to the heart is incredible, and it just hurts. Now, Jesus they just heard him do all this preaching and miracles, and they didn't have the faith in him. They were still scared, all right? But the most important part of the story isn't that Jesus was in the boat with them. The most important part is that Jesus is. The most important part is that Jesus is with them in the boat. And just like him being in the boat with them, Jesus is right here beside us. He's right here beside me right now. In my trials, in my storms, in my persecutions, and the things that I have to go through on a daily basis, Jesus Christ is right here beside me. And in many cases, kind of like the footprints in the sand, in many cases, Jesus is carrying me because I don't have the strength to do it. But if I just lean on Jesus, then I'll be okay. If I lean on myself and my works, I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail miserably. All right? So basically what we want to get through with these storms is trusting that Jesus is going to take care of the storms. He's going to take care of the storms of our lives. He's going to take care of everything and anything. We just have to have the faith. Now, yes, the storm is scary. It's a physical storm. It's something that we're going through. It's something that is real to us. But we have to have the faith that Christ is stronger, that Christ is going to take care of us through these storms. And it is my prayer that each and every one of you will turn towards God, turn towards Jesus during all of these prayers, all of these temptations, and all of these dangers. Not lean on yourselves. Even the smallest thing needs to go to God. Nothing needs to be left to man. Everything needs to be taken to God. If you can do that, then you've already won half the battle. God bless.